Hello, lovelies. You're listening to episode 47 of the Broken Enchantments podcast, written and read by Elizabeth Wheatley. That's me. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Be sure to check out my Patreon for next week's episode, now available. You can check out the links below. Happy listening. Kneading the hem of her sleeve in her fingers, Janir listlessly rested her forehead against the window. Her father tersely discussed the recent development with Knistrith, Varsir, a senior Morton from the Honor Guard, and the Lord Argetallam's chief advisor, Haverless. They were in a small antechamber with a single-paned window across from the solid mesquite door and a few hanging lamps. The room was unbearably stuffy. Privacy meant no air, apparently.
There is no way to identify the assassin. He was Slavish, but anyone might have hired him, Varsir reported. How did he manage to enter the palace in the first place?
The Lord Argetallam spoke calmly, but no one was fooled by it.
Varsir lowered his gaze. My men are searching for answers as we speak.
After the guards had found Janir and Lucan with the thwarted assassin's body, it had taken all of 1 minute for the Lord Argetallam to appear with Knistrith, furious and concerned at the same time. Both Janir's father and Knistrith had doled out harsh words when they learned that she had wandered off by herself. They had taken Lucan out of an earshot for several minutes before dismissing him. Janir still hadn't had the chance to change her stained gown. She had every intention of burning the thing first chance she got. But a servant had brought her a washcloth and a basin of water to clean the assassin's blood off her face and hair. She contemplated the bright red stains on her sleeves, surveying the blood spatter with a dull, empty feeling inside.
Whatever the case, someone in your inner circle has either spoken of Princess Janir being in a weakened state, or is the traitor, Haverless reasoned.
Haverless looked old enough to be her father's father, with an almost bone-white beard and hair that had once been a rich ebony. His skin was like old saddle leather, and a black patch covered where his right eye had once been. Janir had heard that Haverless was base-born, but had risen through the ranks on merit. He had achieved the rank of Honor Guard at a young age, and from there become one of the principal advisors to the previous Lord Argetallam, Janir's grandfather. Haverless made her think of a wolf, an old, lean wolf bearing the scars of countless conflicts, accustomed to fighting for everything.
Whoever it is should be on his knees praying I don't find him, the Lord Argetallam growled.
It was fortunate that Prince Lucan was there to save his sister, Knistrith commented.
Yes, most fortunate, was it not?
The Lord Argetallam furiously, almost violently, adjusted his tunic collar. They all spoke as if Janir wasn't there. She wondered why they had bothered to have her in the room at all.
In any event, I suggest we assign a half-dozen or so of the Honor Guard to protect Princess Janir, Varsir put in.
Haverless concurred.
It would be the best option. In your absence, my lord, I will. No, the Lord Argetallam clipped. No, someone I trusted has tried to have my daughter murdered. I will not make the mistake twice. Janir comes with me and the vanguard to Valmaken.
I take it Prince Lucan's request shall then be denied? Morton Haverless asked.
The boy deserves the chance to earn his Karkatan. That is the right of all youth. He had one, the Lord Argetallam growled. He failed spectacularly.
Janir rubbed at her forehead. She didn't understand how Lucan could have anything left to prove after tonight, but it seemed unfair that he wasn't even going to get the chance.
"But, my lord," Knistrith interjected, "how will we protect her in Valmaken? It is a Slavish fortress. We are not—" "We shall not announce her. She may draw suspicion, but an untried youth under my protection could belong to any one of my nobles." The Lord Argetallam brushed it off. "Regardless, she stays with me." "My lord, if I may say so, perhaps she could stay in my household. As a ward, it would be far more discreet." The wrinkles of Haverless's forehead deepened. "Battle is no place for a convalescent." "We go as guards only." The Lord Argetallam straightened. "She stays with me."
Without question, the honor guard accepted the orders.
"As you command. Shall I form a personal guard for her?" "Yes. Morton Cerilius and Morton Canicade. That should be sufficient. Add them to the detail. I will make the arrangements."
With a reverent bow, Varser disappeared out the door.
"You have permission to leave,"
the Lord Argetallam coolly informed his sister and adviser. Knistrith also bowed to the Lord Argetallam before she slipped out the mesquite door.
"My lord brother." "You may leave as well, Morton Haverless," the Lord Argetallam said in a clipped tone.
Haverless lingered, and Janir thought he had the look of one trying to come up with an argument, but at the Lord Argetallam's firm tone, he skulked away after Knistrith.
"Janir."
The Lord Argetallam came up behind her. She faced him, feeling oddly numb.
"Are you sure you aren't hurt?"
Janir nodded.
"Good."
Without warning, the Lord Argetallam grabbed her chin and forced her to meet his gaze.
"You are not well, Janir, and until you have regained more of your reasoning, you will do as you are told without question, or I will be forced to punish you. Do you understand?"
"Yes, Lord Father."
Janir didn't dare say otherwise. "You were almost assassinated because of your foolishness here at home. Where we are going, it will take far less than that to kill you. Do I make myself clear?"
"Yes, Lord Father."
A thick sensation formed in her throat. The Lord Argetallam released her. "To bed with you."
"Lord Father."
"What?"
Janir ducked her head, hands folded before her. "Forgive me, but I heard Lucan requested assignment to Valmaken as well."
The Lord Argetallam was quick to respond. "What of it? At least one heir must remain here."
"If I may, my lord, could I ask that his request be granted?"
"Why?"
"Forgive me, but he saved my life. And you still have Kestrel." Janir took a deep breath. Now might not have been the best time to ask a favor, in hindsight.
"If you think you can expect your brother to safeguard you from every threat, you are mistaken."
"I expect nothing from Lucan. But how can he earn his Carcatan if he is never given the chance? Please, Lord Father."
"He saves your life, and suddenly you are his advocate."
Janir knotted her mouth, fairly writhing beneath her father's stare. "He risked his life for mine. Asking generosity of you rather pales in comparison." Folding his arms across his chest, the Lord Argetallam let out a short breath.
"Very well. I shall permit your brother to accompany us, but I promise nothing else. Now away with you."
"Thank you." Bowing, Janir stepped outside the door, where 2 armored Argetallam Mortons waited to escort her to her apartment. No one spoke as they flanked her through the hallways back to her room. At her door, one of the guards waited outside with her while the other went into her apartment. Janir heard him turning over objects, moving furniture and opening all of the doors. Even if she'd had the energy to protest, there was nothing she could have done. After a quarter hour or so, the Morton re-emerged and tersely indicated that her room was safe. As Janir went in, the guards assumed position on either side of her door, ready to watch over her for the remainder of the night. Her apartment had been minimally disturbed, and what had been misplaced, she could have the servants fix in the morning. She fumblingly changed the bloody dress for her nightgown, slid into her bed, and hoped that she would be able to steal a few hours' sleep before the sun came up.
Janir, you're normally pacing the floors when I come in. Get up.
Knistreth unsympathetically tugged the blankets off her niece. With a groan, Janir blinked, clearing away the last of her dreams. She glanced to her open bedchamber door and blinked again. Who were those people? A gangly, beak-nosed woman in a plain grey dress with a mop of maple hair poking out the top of her wimple inspected the contents of a large wooden box. Inside were measuring strings, cutting implements, and patches of various metals and leathers. Two young servants, or perhaps they were apprentices, toted in another wooden box and set it down. The beak-nosed woman sputtered in protest and made them move it several feet to the left.
They are assistants from the armory. We have to get you fitted for a suit of armor if you're going to Valmaken, Knistreth explained. Come now, up you get.
Janir clambered to her feet with a great force of will and followed after Knistreth. In the sitting room, she was made to stand on a stool and hold out her arms while the beak-nosed woman measured every inch of her. One of the woman's apprentices made notes on a clay tablet of some sort, and the other aided the beak-nosed woman with the measuring strings. Janir thought there must be enough strings there to measure a horse and 2 cows at once.
Stop moving, please, the beak-nosed woman requested in her shrill voice.
Janir crunched her tongue between her teeth. It was so odd to have strangers touching her. How could they expect her to not be uncomfortable? Soon her arms began to ache, and still the beak-nosed woman insisted that she stay exactly as she was. Knistreth appeared to be sniggering. Janir had to fight down a surge of annoyance. After an hour of tedium, Janir was finally done. She sprang down from the stool and into her dressing room without a word. Over her shoulder, she heard Knistreth giving instructions.
You will craft it with wired steel. Only the finest Morsane leather.
Moments later, the 3 servants from the armory scuttled out the door with their trunks and stools thumping down the hall. Janir remembered reading about Morsanes in one of her books. They were bat-like creatures, the size of large dogs, with iron-tough scales, adequate teeth, and vicious tempers that could glide on their fleshy wings or just as easily run on the ground. They lived mostly in areas between sea and land, and there was a colony of them somewhere in the unclaimed mountains. Every so often, Argetallams would embark on risky journeys to bring back the precious pelts. There weren't many materials that were better for armor than their hides.
We're going to have to accelerate your lessons. You'll have to have at least a basic knowledge of Carcotton play within the fortnight. And then there's protocols, chain of command, and a dozen other things.
Janir groaned and stepped out of her dressing room. I want to speak with Lucan before I leave. Knistreth flinched ever so slightly.
Why?
He saved my life.
Janir had thought it would be obvious. Yes, well, perhaps something...
A knock cut her off. Knistreth went to answer it, grateful for the interruption. Janir quietly huffed in irritation. Sometimes she felt as if Knistreth treated her like an infant. A moment later, Knistreth returned with Amilla and Morton Cerilius. They were both in full armor, something Janir was somewhat unsettled to see.
You and Amilla will be bunkmates in Valmaken, Knistreth explained. Morton Cerilius shall be one of your personal guards.
Cerilius offered her a rigid bow. Janir glanced around her bedchamber, taking in the full-length mirror in one corner, the four-poster feather bed, the thick, luxurious carpets, and the tapestry of a flying griffin over her headboard. Then the dressing room, stocked with exquisite jewelry and elegant clothes fit for royalty and better behind her. The sound of bunkmates didn't sound appealing at all. After breakfast, we're all going back down to the gardens, and you're going to start sparring with Amilla. I am? Janir balked. Don't you think it's a bit soon for that? I'll try not to be too harsh. Amilla smirked. Like I said, we have to accelerate your lessons. Knistrith explained with a shrug. Morton Cerilius shall also be accompanying you everywhere from now on. Janir looked to Cerilius with alarm. He looked precisely as happy with that notion as she did. He was going to hate serving this helpless little princess. If Amilla was trying not to be harsh, Janir hated to think what she was like when she was trying to be harsh. There was hardly a moment in the next fortnight when Janir wasn't sore or tired in some way or other. Cerilius's silent observation of everything she did outside her rooms certainly didn't help. During the day, they made her relentlessly practice with the marble training carcatan, and in the evening, Knistrith had her review books on protocols and the Slavish, Aracelian, and Brevian militaries. Most of the information went straight through her head, then left. When her daily studies were finally over, she was too exhausted to do anything such as wander the gardens. Not that she would have. But there was still a strange restlessness. A nagging thought that wouldn't go away. She still wanted to speak with Lucan, but Knistrith always found an excuse. Morton Canicade was chosen as her second guard, and he disproved her notion that honor guards were all sullen and silent. The man talked enough for all three of them at times. He seemed much more accepting of his role as her protector. Well, your concerns were unnecessary. She is well enough to travel, though I would avoid any hard work or open fights for some time, my lady, Janvissa announced, gathering up her healer's tools and packing them inside her cedar box. Excellent. I'll see you in the morning, Janir. We leave before dawn, so don't stay up too late. Knistrith closed the door to Janir's apartment behind her. Janir rolled down her right sleeve, where Janvissa had been monitoring her pulse, and buttoned up the cuffs. An awkward quiet settled over the room. Janvissa packed her cedar box, and Janir had an intense desire to fill the silence. You're very skilled, Janvissa. Already, and you can't be older than me. She meant it as a compliment, but the other girl bowed as if to make up for it. Some are graced with art, others with words, others still with magic. My talent is healing, Janvissa softly replied, fastening the brass clasp on the cedar box's lid. Gifted is the word they use, ever since I was 7. How did you learn so much at that age? Janir had been seeing the slave almost daily for weeks, but this was perhaps the first real conversation they'd had. Janvissa glanced up, surprised. If you don't mind answering. Janir sometimes forgot that perhaps the other girl didn't want to speak. Janvissa hesitated. My father was the village apothecary, and my mother was a midwife. Then, when I was 12, they sent me to live with my uncle, a healer in a larger town, to be his apprentice. I spent a couple of years studying, but then, over a year ago now, the town was raided and, well, here I am. They were both quiet. Janir shifted awkwardly on the couch. I'm sorry, Janir said, sympathy rimming her voice. Janvissa forced a smile. It's not your fault. She sniffed and blinked several times. Janir hadn't realized that the other maiden had been crying. Tears or no, Janvissa's voice was even and tempered as she continued. I am a slave here, even if I'm treated well. Better than slaves outside the palace. Aside from you and your brother, you're the only free person who has shown an interest. Janvissa tucked her cedar box under her arm. I thank you for that. You know my brother? Janvissa faltered. Well, yes. I was his healer when he... She cleared her throat. Forgive me. I forgot myself. Janir had no idea what that meant, and she didn't expect she'd get a straight answer. Do you think Lucan would be willing to see me? Do you still see him? Janvissa's perpetual calm wavered, but she tried to hide her alarm at that question. Lucan has not been under my care for several months. I persuaded him to let me treat his burns after... Janvissa snapped her mouth shut. After what? Janir asked in puzzlement. What's wrong? Forgive me, my lady. Forgive what? Lucan has... Lucan? Janir couldn't hide her surprise as the realization struck her. You call him Lucan? Not Lord Lucan or Prince Lucan? Janvissa's color drained. I'm not angry or anything, but you're seeing him often? Milady, I don't know what would happen if you told anyone. Janvissa shook her head. Please, he's a good man. I won't tell. Janir hastily assured her, realizing she had given the wrong impression. I'm just... Be careful. She explained. Milady? Janvissa's fear gave way to bemusement. Be careful. I mean, I don't want something bad to happen to you. Princess Janir, I appreciate your concern, but your brother would never hurt me. The calm returned to Janvissa's voice. You don't know Lucan that well, Janir countered. He had saved Janir's life, but he was a prince, and Janvissa was a slave. She had no rights at his hands. Janvissa's response was not at all defiant or rebellious, yet unwavering. Perhaps you do not know your brother as well as you think. Janir wasn't going to argue. Just have caution, please. Yes, my lady. Janvissa smiled again, a demure, appreciative smile. She exhaled out her nose. Maybe I'll have the chance to get to know him better in Valmaken. Janir shrugged. You never know. Even if she did suspect Knistrith and the others would continue to keep her from speaking with him. Janvissa stiffened. Lucan is going? Yes. Janir's toes dug into the carpet at the feeling she had just said something she shouldn't have. He requested it, and the Lord Argetallam agreed after I spoke to him. Did you... Very well. Janvissa turned away hastily, fumbling with the top of her cedar box. He may not have received word yet. It's possible. It's quite all right, my lady. If Janvissa had interrupted a royal with Knistrith or one of the honor guards in earshot, Janir didn't want to guess what might happen. Good night. The slave girl slipped out of Janir's apartment before the princess could ask anything more. You have been listening to Broken Enchantments, written and read by Elizabeth Wheatley. Don't forget to check out my Patreon for early access to episodes, bonus content, and lots of patrons-only freebies. You can learn more at elizabethwheatley.com. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube. I'll see you next time.